Let us simplify. The square root of 125x cubed. That's 58, number 58. 125 is not a perfect square, so we need to factor 125. So what are those possible factors of 125? Let's see. When we factor 125, we consider those that are perfect squares. So we can simply think of a number. What are those factors of 125? We have 5 and 25. Okay. Are we done there? We already have a perfect square, right? So 5 and 25. So that's 25 times 5. How about your x cubed? We know that a power is a perfect square if it is divisible by 2, but x cubed is not divisible by 2. Okay? So that means we have to break down x cubed as a product of two powers of x. What are the two powers of x? So that one of them is a perfect square. 3 is not divisible by 2, so it's not a perfect square. So let's break it down into two factors as a product of powers of x. We only need to think of those exponents. So if your exponent here is 3, what exponent can I put to both x? One of them should be divisible by 2. The largest number divisible by 2. 2 and 1. All right, 2, 1, but no need to put 1. We can disregard 1 later on. And therefore, we have this perfect squares, right? These are your perfect squares. 25 and x squared are perfect squares. So we can rewrite it into square root of 25, grouping those perfect squares together, 25 and then x squared and then 5x. We can write into square root of 25x squared times square root of 5x. Square root of 25x squared is, let's start with the square root of 25. What's square root of 25? 5. Square root of x squared, the square root of x squared. It's gonna be x. Let's just divide your exponent by 2. Square root of 5x. Since 25x squared is a perfect square, simply get your square root there. Square root 25, 5, square root of x squared, x. How do we get x? Note that we have 2 here, divided by 2, your index here. The index here is 2. So 2 divided by 2, you have 1. So that would be 5x squared of 5x. You have a square root of 147, a raised to 5. 147, anything of those numbers? Okay, let's factor square, 147. Let's start. What do you think divides 147? This is not divisible by 2, right? Can we divide this by 3? Now we can make use of numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7 to divide this number. Just to come up with a perfect square factor. You don't have to divide it by a perfect square. You can start dividing it by small numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7. 2, obviously, we cannot divide it by 2. Can we divide by 3? Let's try. But 147 divided by 3, 14 divided by 3 is, now before, of course, this is 12, 4, minus 2, 2, 7, 27 divided by 3, 9, so you have 3 and 49. It so happens that 49 is a perfect square, so we can put here square root of 3 times 49 times, how about your a raised to 5? 5 is not divisible by 2. So we have to break this down into a product of a power of a. So a. What are those items of 5? One of them should be divisible by 2. 3, 2. But is 2 the biggest number? Make sure that the biggest number is in there. It could be 3, 2, 4, 1, the biggest even number? 4. All right. So it can be 3 too, but how about the 80? We can still factor it. So when you factor a power, make sure that one of the power has the greatest exponent. Right. So for these powers of a raised to 5, we can write a raised to 5 as a raised to 4 times a raised to 1. No need to put 1 there. We can use the properties of square root, but simply look at this. What is, which of these is a perfect square? It's 49 and a raised to 4. So let's look at the square root. What's the square root of 49? 7. What's the square root of a raised to 4? A squared. Just divide 4 by 2, right? So that's a squared. And of course, what stays inside the radical would be 3a. So we have 7a squared squared of 3a. We have a square root of 128, a cubed, b raised to 5. 128 is not a perfect square, so we can factor it. So I'll start by thinking of our factors. For 128, let's use the divisors 2, 3, 5, 7, and so on. Let's see if we can divide it by 2. What's 128 divided by 2? 64. Now my question is 64 a perfect square? Yes. If not a perfect square, then you use another divisor. So I have 2 and 64. For a cube, 3 is not divisible by 2. If it's divisible by 2, do not factor it. But this one is not divisible by 2. So we can factor a cube, right? So let's think of those addends of 3, wherein 1 is the biggest addend that's divisible by 2. It's going to be 2 and 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. How about b raised to 5? I bet you know what's that. B. Okay, you have 2 b's there. 4, 1. Okay, let's identify which of these are perfect squares. We have 64. What else? We have a squared. We have b raised to 4. Take all the square roots of this. Take all the square roots. And so we have 64 first. 8. Square root of 64, 8. Square root of a squared. Just divide 2 by your index 2 to divide by 2 is 1. So a raised to 1 or just a. And then b raised to 4. B squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. We have b squared. And what's there to write inside the radical? You have 2ab. 2ab. So you have 8ab squared square root of 2ab.